Morning. This time we will discuss magnetic resonance imaging, or we call that one as a MRI. Magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, is a medical imaging technique used in radiology to form picture of the anatomy and the physiological process of the body. Most MRI machines are large tube-shaped magnet. When you lie inside an MRI machine, the magnetic field temporarily realign water molecule in your body. Radio wave cause this alignment. Radio wave cause this aligned atom to produce fan signal, which are used to create cross-sectional MRI image like a slice in a loop of bread. Our body consists of 65% oxygen, 18.5% of carbon, 9.5% hydrogen, 3.2% nitrogen, etc. Hydrogen is unique material. Hydrogen is simple element with atomic number of 1 and atomic weight of 1. When hydrogen is on the ionic state, H+, or we call that one as a proton, which is not only positively charged, but also has magnetic spin. MRI utilizes this magnetic spin property of proton of hydrogen to elicit the image. MRI employ powerful magnet which produce a strong magnetic field and force proton in the body to align with that field. When a radio frequency current is then pulsed through the pattern, the proton are stimulated and spin out of equilibrium, standing against the pull of the magnetic field. When the radio frequency field is turned off, MRI sensors are able to detect the energy release as the proton align with the magnetic field. The time it takes for the proton to realign with the magnetic field, as well as the amount of energy release, change depending on the environment and the chemical nature of the molecule. So, physician can tell the difference between various types of tissue based on this magnetic property. To obtain an MRI image, a patient is placed inside a lab magnet and must remain very still during the imaging process in order not to blur the image. Contrast agent, often containing the element gadolinium, may be given to a patient intravenously before or during MRI to increase the speed at which proton realign with the magnetic field. The faster the proton realign, the brighter the image. The figure, this figure in this slide shows the timeline of MRI in 1920. Let's see this one. 1924. Pauli suggests that nuclear particle may have angular momentum, or you call the one as spin. In 1937, Rabi measured magnetic moment of nucleus, or coil magnetic resonance. In 1946, Parcel shows the matter absorb energy at the resonance frequency. In 1946, the same year, Bohr demonstrated that nuclear precision can be measured in detector coil. Then in 19 1959, Singer measured blood flow using NMR in mice, and in 1973, Damadian patent idea for a NMR scanner to detect malignant tissue. And in the same year, Lauterbach published method for generating image using NMR gradient. In 1975, on the three-dimensional transform for MR. In 1980, NMR renamed MRI, and in 1990, Ogawa and colleagues create functional image using endogenous blood oxygenation contrast. Then Raymond Faham Damadian is American physician of Armenian descent, which known as a father of MRI. There are several Nobel Prizes on the discovery on the development of MRI, such as in 1944, the Rabi in physics Nobel for measure magnetic moment of a nucleus. In 1952, Felix Bloch and Edward Mills, Edward Purcell in physics Nobel for basic science of NMR phenomenon. In 1991, Richard Ernst in chemistry Nobel for high resolution pulse FT-NMR. In 2002, Kurt Woodridge in chemistry Nobel for three-dimensional molecular structure in solution by NMR. And in 2003, Paul Lauterbach and Peter Mansfield in physiology or medicine Nobel for MRI technology. MRI is a non-invasive way for your doctor to examine your organ, tissue, and skeletal system. It produces high-resolution image of the inside of the body that have diagnosed a variety of problems. Let's see this one. Most ailments of brain, including tumor, a sport injury, musculoskeletal problem, most spinal condition or injury, vascular abnormality, female pelvic problem, prostate problem, some gastrointestinal tract condition, certain ear, nose and throat condition, and soft tissue and bone pathology condition. There are several patients that cannot have an MRI scan, such as a cardiac pacemaker, certain clips in your head from brain operation, a cochlear implant, a metallic foreign body in your eye, heart surgery in the last 80 weeks. There are three main components of MRI: a scanner, computer, and recording hardware. An MRI scanner is a large tube that contains powerful magnet. You lie inside the tube during the scan. An MRI scan can be used to examine almost any part of the body, including the brain and spinal cord. There are several main components of a scanner: a static magnetic field foil, gradient coil, and radiofrequency coil. Static magnetic fields are constant fields which do not change in intensity or direction over time, and contrast to low and high frequency alternating field. In clinical setting, MRI scanner routinely use static magnetic field in the range of 200 to 3000 MT. These fields are generated by a permanent magnet by the flow of direct current through superconductor and by combination of the two. MRI employ powerful magnet which produce a strong magnet field that force protein in the body to align with the field. When the frequency current is then pulsed through the patient, the protons are stimulated and spin out of equilibrium, standing against pull of magnetic field. There are three methods to generate magnetic field. In this case, let's see. Permanent MRI magnet use permanently magnetic iron like bar magnet that has been twisted into a C shape where the two poles are close together and parallel. In the space between poles, magnetic field is uniform enough for imaging. Up to 30 tons of iron may be needed, restricting their placement to room with a strong enough floor. Their low field strength of about 0.15 to 0.4T restrict their use of diagnostic imaging, being impractical for spectroscopy, chemical shift susceptibility imaging, such as functional brain imaging. Their magnetic field homogeneity is also sensitive to ambient and temperature, so room temperatures must be controlled carefully. The initial purchase price and operating costs are low compared to superconductive magnet. This magnet can also be made with a low containing metal as a neodymium, markedly reducing the weight of the magnet, but at significant additional cost. Restriction or air core MRI magnet operate at room temperature using a standard conductor such as copper in the shape of a solenoid of Helmholtz, a pair coil. A solenoid is a cylindrical shaped coil of wire. The uniform magnetic field is found inside the coil, especially in the center. These magnets are relatively inexpensive to make, but require a constant flow of current while magnetized and imaging. The coil has an electrical resistance that requiring a cooling of the magnet. The operating costs are high because of the power requirement of the magnetic coil and the associated cooling system. Both a permanent and resistive MRI scanner are limited to low field application, a primary open MRI and extremity scanner. These magnets are useful for claustrophobic patient. Then superconductive MRI magnet use a solenoid shape or coil made of alloys such as niobium titanium or niobium tin surrounded by a copper. These alloys have the property of zero resistance to electrical current when cooled down to about 10 Kelvin. The coil is kept below this temperature with liquid helium. The power supply is connected on either side of a short heated segment of the coil, and the current to the coil is gradually increased over several hours until the desired magnetic field is reached. The heat segment is allowed to cool to superconducting temperature, and the power supply remove and take away. The current continue in the closed loop of the coil for years without significant decline. A resulting property is that the magnetic field is always present. Then now let's move to a gradient coil. Gradient coil are used to produce deliberate variation in the main magnetic field. The variation in the magnetic field permit localization of image slice as well as phase encoding and frequency encoding. Then the set of gradient coil for Z-axis are Helmholtz pair, and for the X and Y-axis pair saddle coil. When when an electrical current passes through this coil, the result is a secondary magnetic field. This gradient field destroys the main magnetic field in a slight but predictable pattern. There are 3 sets of gradient coil are used in nearly all MR systems: the X, Y, and Z gradient. The set of gradient coil for Z-axis are Helmholtz pair, for the X and Y-axis pair saddle coil. A Helmholtz arrangement consists of a pair of identical coils placed symmetrically common axis. A uniform magnetic field can be produced in this setup when they are separated by a distance equal to their radius and having equal current in the same direction following through them. Saddle-shaped coil is one of the several basic RF coil used in magnetic resonance instrument. Magnetic field of saddle-shaped coil was calculated using the Biotechnology law and numerically computed. Magnetic field of a sample coil was measured using magnetic resonance method. Then radio frequency coil. Radio frequency coil are the antennas of the MRI system and have 2 functions. First, to excite the magnetization of broadcasting the RF power. This is taken as coil. And the second, to receive the signal from excited spin. This is RX coil. Radio frequency coil are an essential MRI hardware component. They directly impact the spatial and temporal resolution, sensitivity, and uniformity of MRI. Advanced in radio frequency coil are an essential MRI hardware component. They directly impact the spatial and temporal resolution, sensitivity, and uniformity in MRI. Advanced in radio frequency hardware have resulted in a variety of design optimized for a specific clinical application. Radio frequency coil are the antenna of the MRI system and have 2 functions. First, to excite the magnetization by broadcasting the radio frequency power, and second, to receive the signal from the excited spin or RF coil. Magnetic resonance images are made without using any ionizing radiation, so patients are not exposed to the harmful effect of ionizing radiation. But while there are no known hazards from temporary exposure to magnetic resonance environment, the magnetic resonance environment involves a strong static magnetic field, a magnetic field that changes with time, pulse gradient field, and radio frequency energy, each of which carry a specific safety concern. The strong static magnetic field will attack magnetic object or from small items such as a key or cell phone to heavy items such as oxygen tank, floor buffer, and may cause damage to the scanner or injury to the patient or a medical professional if those objects become projectile. Careful screening of people and objects entering the MRI environment is critical to ensure nothing enter the magnet area that may become a projectile. The magnetic field that change with time create loud knocking noise which may harm hearing if adequate and protection is not used. They may also cause peripheral muscle or nerve stimulation that may feel like a twisting sensation. The radio frequency energy used during the MRI scan could lead to heating of the body. The potential for heating is greater during long MRI examination. MRI is based on the magnetization property of atomic nucleus. A powerful, uniform, external magnetic field is employed to align two protons that are normally randomly oriented within the water nuclei of the tissue being examined. This alignment or magnetization is next perturbed or disturbed by introduction of an internal radio frequency energy. The nuclei return to their resting alignment through various relaxation process and in so doing emit radio frequency energy. After a certain period following in the initial radio frequency, the emitted signal are measured. Fourier transformation is used to convert the frequency information contained in the signal from its location in the image plane to corresponding intensity field, which are then displayed as shades of gray in a metric arrangement of pixels. By firing a sequence of radio frequency pulses apply and collect, different types of images are created. Repetition time, or we call this one as a TR, is the amount of time between successive pulse sequence applied to the same slice. Time to echo, or TE, is time between the delivery of the RF pulse in the receipt of the echo signal. A tissue can be characterized by two different relaxation time, minus T1 and T2. I mean that T1 and T2. T1, or longitudinal relaxation time, is the time constant which determines the rate of which excited proton return to equilibrium. It is measure of the time take for a spinning proton to realign with the external magnetic field. Then T2, or transfer relaxation time, is the time constant which determine the rate at which excited protons reach equilibrium or go out of phase with each other. It is a measure of the time taken for spinning proton to lose phase coherence among the nucleus spinning perpendicular to the main field. The most common MRI sequence are T1W and T2W scan. T1W image are produced by using short TE and TR time. The contrast and brightness of the image and predominantly determined by T1 property of tissue. Conversely, T2W images are produced by using longer TA and TR time. In this image, the contrast and brightness are predominantly determined by determined by the T2 properties of a tissue. In general, T1 and T2W image can be easily differentiated by looking the CSP or cerebral spinal fluid. A cerebral spinal fluid is a dark and T1W imaging and bright on T2W imaging. A third common use sequence is the fluid-attenuated inversion recovery or a flare. The flare sequence is similar to T2W image except that the TA and TR time are very long. By doing so, abnormality remain bright, but normal CSF fluid is attenuated and made dark. This sequence is very sensitive to pathology and make the differentiation between CSF and abnormality much easier. Now let's see this one, T1 way, this short TR and T2, and the last one, see this one, we can conclude that MRI imaging sequence is based on the magnetization property of atomic nuclei. A powerful, uniform external magnetic field is emphasized to align the protons that are normally randomly oriented within the water nuclei or the tissue being examined. And the most common MRI sequence are T1W, T2W scan, and fluid attenuated inversion recovery. I think that's all for this time. Thank you for your attention.